I'm a Jewish American woman who served for 20 years in uniform and continue to serve in the United States Congress. At the age of 17, when I entered the United States Naval Academy, I first took the oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I subsequently repeated that oath.
The hearing begins with a heavy silence that feels almost sacred, broken only by the voice of Ella Lura, a proud Jewish American and Navy veteran who has spent 2 decades in uniform defending the nation she loves. Standing before Congress, she speaks with the calm authority of someone who has seen war, commanded sailors, and carried the weight of service far beyond the battlefield.
I'm glad that Congress is voicing its opposition to anti-Semitism and made it clear that dual loyalty smear is unacceptable. Unfortunately, it was also clear from the discussions this week and the ultimate resolution that treating anti-Semitism is being treated differently than other forms of bigotry and hatred. There shouldn't be an asterisk next to anti-Semitism, and I'll continue to fight it. I'm glad that Congress is voicing its opposition to anti-Semitism and made it clear that dual loyalty smear is unacceptable. Unfortunately, it was also clear from the discussions this week and the ultimate resolution that treating anti-Semitism is being treated differently than other forms of bigotry and hatred. There shouldn't be an asterisk next to anti-Semitism, and I'll continue to fight it.
At just 17 years old, she took her first oath to defend the Constitution, an oath she would repeat 6 more times, each repetition marking another chapter of devotion to her country. Her voice trembles slightly as she asks the question that cuts to the bone of the debate. Is that not enough to prove my loyalty to our nation? The chamber falls silent. It's not just a rhetorical question. It's a painful, necessary one, born from years of sacrifice and the sting of having her allegiance doubted because of her faith. She recounts 6 deployments aboard 6 ships, countless nights at sea, long separations from her husband who was also deployed, and the constant responsibility of commanding a combat-ready crew of over 400 sailors under immense pressure. She speaks of the heat of the Persian Gulf, the hum of nuclear reactors, and the endless vigilance required to keep her ship and her people safe. Her words paint a portrait of service few could match. Yet, despite that, she finds herself having to defend her love for America simply because of her identity as a Jewish woman in public life. Her frustration is not just personal. It echoes the collective pain of Jewish Americans who have had to prove their patriotism over and over again in the face of suspicion disguised as political critique.
Anti-Semitism must be condemned unequivocally and emphatically. We have members of this chamber who associate with Louis Farrakhan, who says, quote, Hitler was a very great man. It's time to call out these statements for what they are. Pointed, bigoted, unreasonable, illegitimate, anti-Semitic.
From New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr.
The weight of her testimony deepens when she explains how accusations of dual loyalty aren't new but centuries old. The same poisoned rhetoric that once justified persecution and exclusion of Jews in every corner of history. She refuses to stay silent, saying that questioning her loyalty after 20 years of service is not only offensive but dangerous, because it revives the very language that has led to violence against her people for generations. The room listens, riveted, as she connects the past to the present, linking her experience as a veteran to a larger struggle against prejudice cloaked in the language of ideology. Then come the news clips, flashing on screens around the nation, showing Ilhan Omar's controversial remarks about Israel supporters being motivated by Benjamins. Those few words reignited an ancient slur, that Jewish influence in politics is bought rather than earned. Lawmakers from both parties condemned her, yet for many the damage was already done. Even the House had to stop its legislative work to pass resolutions condemning anti-Semitism, something unthinkable in modern America. Representative Josh Gottheimer's voice soon fills the chamber, emotional and resolute, as he reminds everyone that questioning Jewish Americans' loyalty is as shameful as when John F. Kennedy's loyalty was questioned for being Catholic. He speaks not as a politician, but as a grandson of Holocaust survivors, carrying the pain of history.
In elected office, and by extension, all Jews living in America. I'm proud to vote on this resolution in condemnation of this rhetoric. I yield my time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's all be honest with each other. We are here today, right now, because of anti-Semitic rhetoric from one member of this chamber said again and again and again. I apparently am giving Rep. Omar more credit than the Speaker is, because I don't believe she is naive. I believe that she knows exactly what she's doing. It is an American value, by the way, to have reasonable, legitimate criticism of a government, whether it be the...
In his tone, Lee Zeldin follows, his outrage sharp as a blade, declaring that if any Republican had said what Omar did, they would have been instantly punished. But because she belongs to a protected faction, accountability is replaced by excuses. He warns that anti-Semitism must never be relativized or politicized, because hate, no matter who it comes from, remains hate. On the Senate floor, even Mitch McConnell weighs in, his gravelly tone underscoring the gravity of the moment. He condemns Omar's rhetoric as the old ugly dual loyalty smear, and reminds America that support for Israel stems not from money or manipulation, but from shared democratic values and a deep cultural bond. Yet, in a rare note of balance, McConnell also condemns the anti-Muslim backlash that followed, proving that standing against one form of hate does not justify another. Meanwhile, tension explodes inside the House chamber as Marjorie Taylor Greene clashes with Rashida Tlaib. What begins as political debate quickly spirals into an emotional duel that grips the nation. Greene leans into her microphone, accusing Tlaib of hiding behind compassion while spreading division. "You want unity?" she shouts. "Then start by respecting the country that gives you a platform." Gasps ripple through the room. Tlaib rises, trembling but fierce, firing back. "I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to speak for people who don't have a voice." Their exchange grows hotter, louder, rawer, until the speaker's gavel can barely restore order. The moment becomes viral within minutes. Hashtags, MTGVS Tlaib and Congress Chaos flood social media. Talk shows replay the shouting match on loop, and the internet divides into camps, each claiming moral high ground. Analysts dissect every glance, every interruption.
America. I know I speak for colleagues on both sides of the aisle when I say that support for the State of Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship is deeply felt all across America. Our relationship is built on common values and democratic principles. Our shared interests, close partnerships, and deep friendships. The support for Israel that you see in this chamber, is not the work of some shadow conspiracy. The members of this body support Israel because so many Americans support Israel. I'd hoped this regrettable episode might have caused this lawmaker to be more careful with her language. But alas, just a few weeks later, here we are again. More anti-Semitic tropes. This time she claims that supporters of Israel have actually, quote, an allegiance to a foreign country. That's the old, ugly dual.
Calling it both the lowest and most honest moment in modern politics. Behind the scenes, party leaders scramble to manage the fallout, some praising Greene's fire, others condemning her tone, but all privately admitting that outrage now rules the political stage. Even in their fury, both women gain something: attention, power, and the ability to dominate the national conversation. The clip racks up millions of views across YouTube and X, shared by people who see in it either courage or chaos. Yet beneath the viral noise lies the haunting echo of Elilura's question, "Is that not enough to prove my loyalty?" It reverberates through the entire episode like a moral pulse, reminding the country what was truly at stake. Her question transcends the argument. It becomes a test for America itself, a reflection on who gets to define patriotism and who is forced to defend it. As cameras flash and headlines scream, the deeper truth lingers. A nation that questions the loyalty of its heroes while rewarding outrage is a nation
to fight for. It stops us from having the opportunity to purchase a home. It stops us from the opportunity to starting that business. It stops us from the opportunity of even economically participating in small ways. We have to.
In danger of forgetting what loyalty even means. And that haunting uncertainty, hanging in the air long after the shouting stops, is the most powerful thing of all. As the echoes of shouting fade, the chamber sits in a fragile silence, broken only by the hum of reporters typing and cameras clicking. Outside, the marble halls of Congress are alive with whispers, staffers trading updates, journalists chasing quote.
I'm glad that Congress is voicing its opposition to anti-Semitism and made it clear that dual loyalty smear is unacceptable. Unfortunately, it was also clear from the discussions this week and the ultimate resolution that anti-Semitism is being treated differently than other forms of bigotry and hatred. There shouldn't be an asterisk next to anti-Semitism, and I'll continue to fight it.
And aides trying to spin the chaos into strategy. Ella Lura walks quietly through the corridor, her face composed but her eyes reflecting the exhaustion of someone who has seen too much. She pauses by a window overlooking the Capitol dome, the same building she once admired as a symbol of unity, but now sees as a battlefield of ideology. Her phone vibrates non-stop. Messages from fellow veterans, Jewish organizations, and supporters across the country. Some call her a hero, others accuse her of politicizing faith. But Ella knows the truth. She didn't speak for politics. She spoke for principle. Inside the chamber, the aftershock continues. Marjorie Taylor Greene is surrounded by reporters shouting questions while Rashida Tlaib is comforted by colleagues, both women claiming moral victory. The video of their confrontation has already reached millions, on talk shows, Twitter threads, and YouTube breakdowns dissecting every expression and pause. Overnight, it becomes more than a political clash. It becomes a national reckoning about identity, faith, and what it means to be American in an era of suspicion. Late-night panels debate whether Congress has turned into a theater of outrage or a mirror of the people it represents. On one side, conservative commentators praise Greene for speaking hard truths, while liberal voices hail Tlaib as a fighter for the unheard. In the middle of all this noise, Ella Lura's speech quietly goes viral, resonating not because it was loud, but because it was human. Her trembling question, "Is that not enough to prove my loyalty?" becomes a rallying cry quoted across news segments and memorialized in online tributes. Veterans post videos sharing their own experiences of being doubted. Jewish Americans flood comment sections with messages of solidarity. And even political rivals admit her words carried undeniable weight. Days later, Congress reconvenes under a cloud of tension. Security is tighter, emotions are raw, and the air feels thick with unfinished business. Ilhan Omar enters the chamber, calm but defiant, prepared to defend herself once again. She insists her comments were misunderstood, claiming she only meant to critique policy, not people. Yet her tone suggests a reluctance to truly apologize. Across the aisle, Ella sits in silence, her eyes fixed forward, refusing to let anger replace the discipline that 20 years in uniform taught her. Speaker Mike Johnson gavels the session to order, urging civility, but the undercurrent of resentment hums louder than his call for decorum. As debate resumes, old wounds reopen. Every word about loyalty, money, and identity feels like a spark near dry wood. When Ella finally rises to speak again, the room stills. She doesn't look at Omar, Greene, or Tlaib. She looks directly at the American flag hanging behind the speaker's chair. Her voice carries the quiet power of conviction as she says, "I wore this nation's uniform not because it was easy, but because it was right. And I will not let hatred of any kind define what America stands for." Her words are not dramatic, but they land like thunder. Some clap, others sit frozen, and even a few who disagree find themselves moved. Outside the chamber, her speech trends again. Stand With Ella floods every feed. News anchors replay her statement alongside clips of soldiers saluting, families reunited at airports, and the faces of Americans who quietly serve every day without fanfare. But even as her words inspire millions, the political divide grows wider. Fundraising emails fly out from both parties, twisting the chaos into campaign fuel. Commentators frame Ella as either a symbol of patriotism or a tool of political messaging, depending on which side they stand on. The truth gets lost somewhere between headlines and hashtags. That night, Ella sits alone in her apartment, the Capitol glowing in the distance, her medals resting on the shelf beside photos of her husband and her crew at sea. She replays the day in her mind, the applause, the silence, the anger, the noise, and realizes something deeper. Loyalty isn't proven in speeches or hearings. It's lived in the quiet moments when no one is watching. She looks at her reflection and whispers, "For them, for all of them," remembering the sailors she led, the sacrifices made, and the promise she swore to uphold. Outside, rain begins to fall over Washington, the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement like fractured stars. It's a fitting image, beautiful, broken, and full of potential. The storm that began in Congress isn't over. It's only beginning. Across the nation, Americans argue, reflect, and choose sides. But somewhere in that chaos, a few begin to understand what Ella meant all along. Patriotism isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who keeps standing when everyone else falls silent. And now America stands at a crossroads. The voices that echoed through that chamber weren't just politicians arguing. They were reflections of a nation divided, a mirror held up to our collective soul. What Ella Lura said wasn't about politics. It was about principle, about the meaning of service, sacrifice, and love of country, in a time when those words are too easily twisted into weapons. For 20 years, she stood watch over the seas, guided warships through storms, and carried the flag into danger without hesitation. And yet, after all of it, she had to stand before her own government and ask if her loyalty was enough. That question should haunt every American who believes in fairness, dignity, and truth. Because if a woman who gave 2 decades of her life in uniform can still be questioned because of her faith, what does that say about the nation she fought to protect? This isn't just a moment in Congress. It's a warning, a lesson, and a call to wake up. We can't allow outrage to replace understanding or hatred to masquerade as debate. We can't keep tearing each other down while pretending to stand for unity. Every soldier, every teacher, every mother who believes in the promise of this country deserves better. The world is watching, and history will remember how we responded when prejudice tried to disguise itself as patriotism. So what side of history will you be on? Will you scroll past injustice or stand up when it matters? Will you let political tribes define truth, or will you think for yourself and defend what's right? Real courage isn't found in trending hashtags. It's in choosing compassion when anger feels easier and truth when lies sound louder. Ella Lura's question, "Is that not enough to prove my loyalty?" isn't hers alone anymore. It's ours. It belongs to every American who's ever been told they don't belong, who's ever been doubted because of their faith, color, or conviction. And that's why this story matters. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. Because it reminds us that patriotism isn't a slogan or a side, it's a responsibility. The same oath Ella swore 7 times lives inside all of us. To defend the Constitution, to protect liberty, and to honor one another even when we disagree. That's what makes America strong, not our divisions, but our willingness to rise above them. So if you believe in that vision, if you still believe that honor, truth and respect matter, then don't stay silent. Share this story. Talk about it. Start the conversation that others are afraid to have. Because silence only helps the hate grow louder. Stand with those who serve, who sacrifice, who love this country enough to challenge it when it strays from its values. Let's make "Is that not enough?" the question that shakes this nation awake. Because it is enough, and it always has been. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and keep your eyes open. Because the fight for truth isn't over. Every week we bring you stories that the headlines twist, voices that deserve to be heard, and truths that demand to be told. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think loyalty should ever be questioned after service? How do we rebuild unity in a divided Congress? Your voice matters here. Together we can remind America what it was meant to stand for. Don't just watch history happen, be part of it.